We hear a lot of people talking about debating online. But what actually is debating? Let's go back in history and have a little look at this. There was a time when words were sharper than swords. When disagreement wasn't feared, it was respected. Because people understood something that we seem to have forgotten. That the truth is not protected by silence, it is in fact revealed through challenge. Debate is one of the oldest civilising forces that we have. Long before television studios, political chambers or social media arguments, there were thinkers walking the dusty streets of ancient Greece asking dangerous questions. Socrates didn't shout people down. He didn't cancel them. He asked them to explain themselves calmly, patiently, relentlessly, until weak thinking collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. And from that simple act came the foundations of Western thought. Plato recorded dialogue as a path to truth. Aristotle gave structure to persuasion, credibility, emotion and logic all working together. And then later came formal systems of reasoning, dialectics where opposing ideas could collide and something stronger emerged from the clash. Debate was never meant to be noise. It was a discipline, training for the mind, a way of sharpening a civilization without drawing blood. Because real debate does something extraordinary. It exposes bad arguments without violence. It allows truth to survive scrutiny. And it gives people a peaceful way to resolve deep disagreements. A society that knows how to debate doesn't need to burn, smash or silence. Words do the work. Logic does the work. Truth does the work. Now imagine if every child were genuinely taught this at school. Not memorising answers, but learning how to think, how to question, how to defend an idea properly. How to change their mind without shame when confronted with something stronger. You would create adults who do not fear disagreement because they're equipped to handle it. Adults who don't reach for anger because they possess clarity. And here is something uncomfortable but very important. True debate does not fear weak thinking. It welcomes it because poor ideas, when examined honestly, fall apart very quickly. Not through cruelty, but through clarity. But when people are not given this skill, something else happens. They meet someone who can argue clearly, and instead of learning, they feel humiliation, frustration, even rage. Not because the other person's argument is stronger in truth, but because their technique is stronger in delivery. It becomes a bit like an untrained fighter stepping into a boxing ring with a professional. The outcome's going to be predictable. It's not fair, and it's certainly not noble. One person doesn't even understand the rules of the contest, while the other has trained for years. So the defeat feels personal, unjust, classless. Not like truth has been discovered, but dignity has been crushed. And when large numbers of people feel that way, unable to express themselves, unable to compete in the arena of ideas, a resentment grows. Not healthy disagreement, but a quiet bitterness. A sense that the game is rigged, that you cannot fight fairly no matter how sincere you are. In that environment, debate stops being a shared search for truth and starts becoming a tool for power. Those trained in language, rhetoric and framing dominate those who were never taught to think in that structured way. And whether intentional or not, the result is the same. The spirit of the ordinary person gets slowly worn down. Not by force, but by imbalance. Because it's hard to feel free when you cannot speak effectively. It's hard to feel equal when every argument you make is dismissed or outmaneuvered. And over time, many simply stop trying. They withdraw, they stay silent, or they lash out in ways that have nothing to do with truth at all. Let's look at the modern world. Universities. Once places built for fearless questioning, increasingly decided which conversations are acceptable before they even begin. Student bodies speak in the language of protection rather than exploration. Moments like this recent announcement from Bangor University, that becomes a symbol, fairly or unfairly, of a deeper cultural shift away from the contest of ideas. We also can look at Parliament, the supposed centre of democratic debate. And what do we see? Laughing, jeering, point scoring, performance for cameras rather than persuasion for truth. It's not disciplined disagreement, but theatre. Noise instead of reasoning. Mockery instead of understanding. When the highest institutions model behaviour like that, it sends a message downward through the whole culture that winning matters more than the truth. that humiliation is stronger than reasoning, that volume replaces clarity. And while we see genuine debate weakening in public life, there is another pattern that quietly is growing stronger. It's a managed sequence, sometimes described as problem, reaction, solution. A crisis appears, public fear rises, a ready-made answer is offered, and the range of acceptable discussion narrows before most people even realise a choice existed. Whether one sees that as a deliberate design or simply the natural habit of modern politics, the effect is similar. Less open argument, more guided outcomes, fewer spaces where ordinary people feel they can genuinely influence the direction of events. And this is why the loss of debating culture matter far more beyond universities and parliament, because when people lose the ability to argue peacefully, history shows what tends to replace it. Not always immediately, but eventually. Silence, division, violence, because people feel like they've got no other choice. Civilization depends on something surprisingly fragile, our willingness to let ideas fight so we don't have to. If we forget how to do that, we don't just lose a skill, we risk losing a piece of what makes society free. So the real question isn't about one university or one political moment or one generation behaving badly. The deeper question is much simpler and much more important. Do we still believe truth should be discovered through open challenge, or are we becoming comfortable with it being decided for us? Because the moment a culture stops debating honestly is the moment it quietly steps away from freedom